Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Hollywood collapses, now Canada booms and takes their productions. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. I've been covering all of Hollywood's production problems in California. Tremendous amounts of their business has been taken out of the state because it's much cheaper to film in other states. It's much cheaper to film, especially in other countries. Now, for the first time, Hollywood Reporter has put out an article talking about how Canada's actually doing very well with production. They're kind of surprised about how well production is going in Canada. And I can tell you why that is. Because Los Angeles is still very expensive to work in. Also, they recently had the problem with the fires. It makes it harder to put the right production teams together. And there's always additional costs when you have to deal with extra problems. Beyond that, Canada is still cheap to produce in, but they got even cheaper. How are they cheaper? Because Donald Trump decided to start a trade war with Canada and China and pretty much the rest of the world. What that does is it causes countries to lose confidence in the currency of the country that they think is going to be most hurt by the trade war. So the dollar has been stronger against Canada's loonie, as they call it. That's what they call their currency. One Canadian dollar is not worth as much as one US dollar, even just going back like a month ago. So if you're going to plan a production and you've got $20 million to spend and you want to get the most for your money, you're going to do that in Canada. And now when you move that production to Canada, it's going to cost even less money than it would have just cost just a couple of months ago. From the Hollywood Reporter, Canada's dry spell is over as location shoots head north. 1 year after Canadian film and TV production slowed to a trickle due to the Hollywood strikes, the Great White North is once again minting green. So they seem to be doing okay. But from the Los Angeles Times, what do we lose if Hollywood becomes the Detroit of the entertainment industry? Detroit used to be very successful as a car manufacturer. It used to be like the jewel of the country in terms of manufacturing. America was the biggest car manufacturer in the world, and their dominance was completely unquestioned. Now Detroit has had some more severe problems since they've lost all of that auto manufacturing. And there are people that are trying to revive Detroit, but since it's lost this manufacturing base, life for people there has never been the same. It's not been as good. And if that wasn't enough, Disney didn't do as well this last quarter as they thought they were going to do, so ultimately, they're cutting $1 billion worth of production. Now, Netflix is adding $1 billion worth of production because Netflix happens to be doing very well, coincidentally. But Disney, not so much. From the Hollywood Reporter, Disney lowers content spending estimate by $1 billion for this year. As Wall Street goes through its earnings beat and stagnant streaming subscriber growth, the company revises its spending expectation from $24 billion to $23 billion for produced and licensed content, as well as sports rights. So that $23 billion number, down from $24 billion, even includes the rights that they're paying to the sports leagues for their sports content. And as it happens, because there's more immediacy, there's more of an event when people log on to a live streaming event, sports rights are more important than TV shows and movies these days. It doesn't mean they're going to stop TV shows and movies completely. It just means that, especially these studios that are focused on their streaming services, many of them are putting more and more cash into the sports rights. From the Hollywood Reporter, Canada's dry spell is over. After the 2023 Hollywood writers and actors strikes and the budget crunch that followed, the industry shock that was felt throughout Los Angeles extended all the way to Canada, specifically Ontario and British Columbia, where the usual deluge of location shoots slowed to a trickle. The strikes triggered a 26% downturn in production spending in 2024 compared with 2023, leaving local sound stages dark and production crews idle. Hopes for a quick recovery surged once the labor action was settled in late 2023 and Hollywood got back to work. As LA continues struggling to bounce back, the locations business in Canada is booming again, signaling a speedy rebound that few predicted. And they're not going to say it overtly here necessarily, but these are productions that are being moved from California and moved from other places that would have been more expensive to produce in, now being moved up to Canada. Quote, despite all the uncertainty, it does seem to be ticking along very well at the moment, according to Karen Thorne-Stone, President and CEO of Ontario Creates, which markets the province to foreign producers. Quote, production levels are looking good for us. The rebound has been strong. We're feeling hopeful. Does that mean the whole industry is doing well now that Disney is spending $1 billion less on production? And California's falling apart? No, it means productions are being moved to Canada that weren't going to be in Canada. The brutal pragmatism that is sending U.S. production north is fueled by some very generous tax breaks and a Canadian dollar that continues to drop in value compared with the American greenback. That means increasing savings for U.S. producers, and if President Trump goes through with his proposed tariffs, the Canadian dollar could plummet even further, resulting in even more savings. Insiders say Los Angeles wildfires are unlikely to have any immediate impact on Canadian location shoots, even as the disaster essentially shut down production in Hollywood for nearly 2 weeks. What's happening in LA is tragic, and we're all watching with broken hearts and very much hoping that it won't have a long-term impact on the industry, according to Thornstone. Quote, I don't think we've seen any direct impact from that situation on our production levels at this point. The scouting and the production was happening before the fires. Yeah, the fires doesn't necessarily help. The problem is it's still too expensive to do business in the United States, particularly in California, and now with the dollar being lower in Canada, you get like a multiplier effect. So what else do they have to do in Canada to get your business? They've kind of set up a perfect situation. If you're in Canada, not if you're in California. For the time being, Canada's location sector is focusing on its own recovery post-strikes, with several provinces beginning to emerge from the shadow of Ontario, where most high-profile shows and movies set up shop thanks to the extensive infrastructure and crews in Toronto. Manitoba, for instance, has seen significant activity. Mark Provisario, a co-founder at Odenkirk Provisario Entertainment, has made 3 movies in Manitoba in recent years with Better Call Saul star Bob Odenkirk, the 2021 indie Nobody, which became a surprise box office hit for Universal Pictures, collecting more than $57 million worldwide, the sequel Nobody 2, and the thriller Normal. Asked about the experience of shooting with Manitoba crews, Provisario is reluctant to say how he truly feels. Quote, I don't want to answer honestly, then everyone will start going there, Provisario says. They're fantastic. We love them. And that's the problem. It's been so many years that Canada has been taking production out of the United States without Hollywood basically doing anything to slow it down or stop it. Certainly nothing that actually worked. That there are now production crews that are just ready to go and help you film your projects, TVs, movies, whatever you need, because they're so established. And they've already done so much of this kind of work before. Provisario recalls his producing partner, Braden Aftergood, first pitching him on Winnipeg and its possible Middle America look for Nobody, in which Odenkirk starred as a seemingly humdrum family man with a secret past as a professional assassin. Winnipeg wasn't on anyone's radar, says Provisario. Once we had location photos and images, we saw we could mimic a steel town in Ohio or Pennsylvania, so it worked for us. Adds Lynn Scromita, CEO and film commissioner at Manitoba Film and Music, quote, we're seeing the momentum pick up again. We're definitely getting inquiries from across Canada as well as the US. People are really paying attention to what's happening in Manitoba. Provisario no doubt benefited from Manitoba's 45% film tax credit, 65% with bonuses. So let's say your budget is $20 million. These guys are going to give you 65%, up to 65% rebate on your expense for production. That's pretty good. Canadian tax credits and subsidies remain key drivers of production for local indie filmmakers and studios. But subsidies and incentives can only do so much in the face of industry contraction. Canada's animation sector, for instance, hit a 10-year high in 2023, only to plunge by 55% in 2024, thanks to the major streamers pulling back on kids' series acquisitions. Despite the industry headwinds, Toronto continues to be a bustling hub for Canadian animation, producing hits like Spin Master Entertainment's kids series Unicorn Academy, which was just renewed for a second season on Netflix. Elsewhere, Newfoundland and Labrador's 40% tax credit and unique locations have encouraged a recent spike in location shoots for series like the family police drama Hudson and Rex for UPTV and the CW's Son of a Critch. Apple TV Plus's Severance also shot an episode for its second season at locations along the Bonavista Peninsula, and Amazon's Reacher, which primarily has been shot in Ontario, set down over the summer in St. John's, Newfoundland, which doubled as nearby Portland, Maine. Well, word is getting around that Newfoundland is an exciting location where you can do a lot of great work, says Laura Churchill, CEO of Picture NL and Film Commissioner of Newfoundland and Labrador. She adds that her Atlantic Coast province is a 5-hour flight from the UK. British Columbia, long a major studio and streamer production hub given its proximity to Los Angeles, also is experiencing an uptick in calls and queries. Quote, "We've had a lot of phone calls and requests for location packages and scouting, both in December and into January. Our team has been very busy," says the BC Film Commissioner. To meet that demand, Bridge Studios, owners of the first dedicated studio facility in Vancouver, is set to open 20 new sound stages on 18 acres at its Lake City Studios facility this summer. The strong Ontario pipeline for major studio series is underlined by Hulu's The Handmaid's Tale having just wrapped up its final season shoot in Toronto, and much of the series' creative and cast going directly onto the sequel, Testaments, which is set to shoot in Toronto from March to August. But despite Canada's surprisingly rapid recovery after the downturn of the strikes, insiders acknowledge that challenges remain. The hyper-competitive locations business has become even more crowded, with countries all over the planet boosting incentives and tax breaks to lure lucrative Hollywood productions to their shores. The UK and Eastern Europe offer particularly stiff competition, but Canadian industry players feel confident that the major studios and streamers will continue to choose the highly developed locations industry of Canada in the long run, because they've done so much of this before that they know how to operate. Still, if it's cheaper to do in the UK or Romania, a lot of producers or studios are just going to go to the UK or Romania. It really is about the money. Says Victoria Harding, Executive Director of the Directors Guild of Canada, Ontario, quote, "With the infrastructure we have here, both human and physical, eventually we will prevail." The infrastructure is absolutely crucial because when you're spending money and you're trying to get something done, you can't have things fall apart in the middle because someone doesn't know how to do something or they don't do it well, and then you have to redo it. It makes everyone involved look like they don't know what they're doing, and they can also lose distribution opportunity. From the LA Times, what we lose if Hollywood becomes the Detroit of the entertainment industry. Few successful movies are actually filmed in Los Angeles these days, despite the fact that the studios and production firms are still mostly headquartered there, including Sony Pictures, its TriStar unit, and Charles D. King's Macro, the companies responsible for One of Them Days. Southern California's entertainment economy has taken a beating over the past few years. The COVID-19 pandemic, 2 overlapping labor strikes, and the pullback of overspending during the streaming wars, compounded by a structural problem for the movie business's hometown. It costs too much to film there. Film and TV shoots have fled for cheaper locales, enticed by generous tax incentives offered by rival states and countries. Those threats have existed for a long time, but they lately have tipped over into what some public officials now recognize as crisis territory. According to data from nonprofit agency FilmLA, 2024 was the second slowest year for production on record in the Los Angeles area, only beating 2020, the year of the coronavirus shutdowns. Reality TV's exodus was especially striking. A recent survey of executives by production tracking firm ProdPro ranked the most desired place to shoot. California ranked 6th, beaten by Toronto, the UK, Vancouver, Central Europe, and Australia. The devastation from the wildfires, which destroyed the homes of many in the industry both above and below the line, might be the last straw for some workers considering taking their talents elsewhere. The creators, like the writers and the actors who work on a film, are considered above the line. The people that are actually the physical people putting together the movie projects or TV projects are considered below the line, like the camera operators. The fires, in fact, underlined the lack of activity in LA. It was relatively easy to find TV productions that were at least briefly shut down by the disaster, such as NCIS, Hacks, and Abbott Elementary. Film projects much less so, because they really weren't shooting that many films. The struggles aren't solely due to high costs of doing work in Los Angeles. Globally, the number of film and TV productions starting principal photography in 2024 still lagged 11% behind the pre-strike year of 2022, suggesting that an overall retrenchment is largely to blame for the sluggish recovery. But it's clear when production is coming back, it's mostly doing so elsewhere. Elsewhere, like in Canada, like we were just talking about. And the mood going into 2025 is not so great. Executives polled by ProdPro said they expect production volume to increase this year, but the vast majority said budgets would be about the same, 42%, or slightly lower, 39%. They're looking at several potential methods of cutting costs. Yes, tax breaks was number one on the list, but other popular options on the table include shorter schedules, digital workflows, and fewer episodes. Digital workflows means less work for people, more work for technology, like AI. Analysts and writers such as NYU's Scott Galloway have compared Los Angeles' plight to the hollowing out of the U.S. auto industry in Detroit. If you look at crew members' social media accounts, those parallels don't seem so hyperbolic. There are surely similarities to sectors such as domestic manufacturing and agriculture, which were also pounded by global competition, technology disruption, and automation. Some are taking action. Governor Gavin Newsom last year proposed more than doubling California's tax credit for film production that would probably help matters, but only to a point. As we've covered before on this channel, California's tax incentive program currently does not help cover costs for above-the-line talent, which limits the amount that studios and streamers can save on individual productions. So even when you get a credit from California, you can't credit all of the costs of production like you can in pretty much every other geography where you could take your production. So really, unless you had to, why would you do it in California? Crew members are doing what they can to campaign for help. In the wake of the Eaton, Hughes, and Palisades fires, crew workers launched a petition calling for uncapping the tax incentive for productions that shoot in LA County for the next 3 years as part of the overall disaster relief effort. The online petition also asked that studios and streamers commit to at least 10% more production in LA over that period of time, but companies are going to follow incentives. 10%, guys, the studios can't give 10% additional production in the LA area to try to save your local industry? No, they can't. They don't want to spend 1% more than they have to spend. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you. And if you want to support the channel and help me make even more videos, subscribe to the channel and become a paid member today.